Well, we'll start with aviation today. Yes, according to the International Air Transport Association, aviation directly employs nearly 40,000 Nigerians and generates over $700 million in economic output. That's about 0.2% of the country's GDP. But the impact goes far beyond the tarmac. When you factor in the wider supply chain, tourism, employee spending, aviation supports over 16,000 jobs and contributes a total of $2.5 billion to the economy. Now, tourism linked to aviation alone brings in over $450 million and provides employment for more than 66,000 people, with international visitors spending $760 million annually. Despite these numbers, Nigeria's aviation impact is still smaller compared to countries like Ethiopia, where a strong airline network drives double the employment and nearly 1.2% of GDP, even with fewer airports. My guest today is the Vice President of Aviation, Mr. Chen. He's joining me to explore the role of airlines, airports, key institutions in shaping the aviation ecosystem, also attending the international affair that is going on in Abuja. Well, we have a lot to discuss about. But Mr. Chen, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thanks for the invitation. Thank you.
All right, then. Now, for context, let me ask you, how would you describe the broader landscape of companies and institutions shaping today's global aviation ecosystem?
Let's say aviation. Aviation is a little different from different sectors. It's a kind of, it mainly consists of airport authority, airlines, and then the regular body. So this is the common, like, international framework about aviation sectors. So around the airport infrastructures, and then will be a lot of quite a company with doing, let's say, master planning, consultancy, and then the contractors to build the airport, and then all the innovative technology manufacture for the special airport system. And after that will be, let's say, the operators operating maintenance, and then the operators of the airport, etc. So there were quite a bunch of the specialized company around the world for the airport infrastructure. And then aside of that one will be the airlines. So you see everywhere worldwide there were so many airlines, but around the airlines there will be aircraft manufacturer to build the aircraft, and then there will be MRO companies mainly doing the maintenance, repairing, and operation of to supporting all the aircraft. So, and then beside that one, then there will be quite some, I say, special, let's say, manufacturer for the training equipment, simulators and so on, and plus the training institution to train the pilots, cabin crew, and also the MRO engineer and so on. And beside that part will be majorly the regulator. So every country worldwide there was some international institution for regulating the aviation industry, and then every country, every independent state, they have their own national civil aviation authority for that. So this is we call it somehow the framework about all the ecosystem for aviation.
But what makes this Made in Nigeria air show significant for the country and for the region's aviation development in particular?
Yeah, for this Nigeria Air Show, I think for the country it's the first time to build up this one. The major thing is that aviation is very kind of international related. So from the state, I think is for Nigeria Air Show, this was demonstrating mainly two things. One is the openness, one is like the confidence. So aviation is bring the people into the air and so on. From this industry, so the country, by this air show, I think the country and then from ministry, from government, will deliver a quite clear message to the international, saying open. The openness, the open for all the international stakeholders, investors, and then the technology innovators, and to coming into Nigeria to join in this aviation ecosystem from the country. And the other part is now what I also feel the main thing of this air show is the country delivered a strong confidence, focusing on to driving the whole aviation sector to grow up, to be very confident, to welcoming the people to come into the country, to see what we have here, and then to driving form the driving force until moving ahead.
Now let's talk about emerging technologies or innovations that are attracting the most attention at this event.
Like the driving is about innovation, about is again, so worldwide the air traffic becoming more and more. So within the next 20 years, so the air travelers will be double. So with all this great amount of these, let's say, passengers, and then the volume and so on, so the innovation definitely needed. So I'll give you an example, particularly for the airport, for example. So safety is the first thing, and the second thing is efficiency. So, okay, first one is safety. So we have a kind of innovation solutions, and then to supporting the airport to comply with the international safety standards, particularly for the air side and so on. But again, when you start to upgrading your infrastructure and so on, you still need to maintain the airport still under the proper operation without interruptions. This is always becoming a challenge. So by some innovative technologies and solutions, or some proved experience from other part of the world to be shared over here. So this will be somehow quite some innovation to be beneficial from here. And from the other perspective is we talk about, let's say, efficiency. Efficiency would heavily link with the revenue and related with the passenger experience. So the efficiency part, right now we are already in a really modern world with all the IT technologies. And then to combining with the standard airport operation process, and then to implementing with all these IT system, like the airport operation database with the flight information system, to integrating all of this one, technical integration and plus integrating with the operational model, the operational standard operation process, and then to make the airport operating more efficient. I'll give you example, let's say from the other part of the world is, for example, we call TMS, the turnaround management system. Okay. So normally one aircraft with the parking to the bridge, and then you spending 2.5 hours to make one turnaround, or you taking only 45 minutes to make one turnaround. So by the new technologies, this is possible. But by saving 1.5 hours time, this will be beneficial for airlines, for airport, and also for the passengers. So from revenue point of view, the passenger experience point of view, is a win-win situation. So this type of, let's say, technology innovations, solutions, and will be very beneficial to be implemented in this sector here.
But over the past decade, now let me ask you that what factors have driven increased international interest, especially from Asia in Niger's aviation and infrastructure sectors?
About aviation development is now, the whole aviation was starting from North America, from Europe, well developed. And then since the last decades, there was quite a fast growing aviation sector in Asia, particularly in China and also in Southeast Asia. So there were quite some hub airports. A couple of hub airports in China, and then plus in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Bangkok. So you see, in Asia was experienced of around more than one decade of the fast growing experience, and under somehow economic growth is quick, and then with the big populations, so they will gain a lot of let's say, faster growth. And then after that, at the same time, and then another trend is now in the Middle East, especially, let's say, in Dubai, let's say in Doha, and so on. They will also have a very fast growth on the whole aviation sectors. So you see, within last decade, there were new technologies and new business models, a new operation experience, so on, based on the fast-growing trend. So Asia was still placed a little bit quite a solid foundation, accumulated from the last 20 years on this sector.
Now, what would you identify as most pressing challenges currently facing Nigeria's aviation industry?
I think Okay, the major challenge. The challenge, okay, not only for Nigeria, I think for whole African continent.
Yeah.
There was some challenging over here. The first one is about, like I said, the aging infrastructures. So most of the airports infrastructure was built something like around 1960, 1970s. So after now it's almost somehow over 50 years or 60 years. So the aging infrastructures, this will becoming a challenging for, let's say, for these sectors over here. And the challenge is not only about the infrastructure itself is old, same time the challenge is now when you start to do upgrading them, and same time you still need to maintain the proper operation of the airport. So upgrading of the airport and plus upgrading and without interruption of the airport operation. So this is one of the major challenges here, what I believe. The second part is about efficiency. So with more and more passenger traveling, the volume is coming up, more flight movements. So the efficiency to handling the passengers, the luggage, and also the aircraft movements and so on, these are becoming challenging. And the challenge itself is not saying a lack of technologies. There are a lot of technologies is already exist or they have exercised already from a different continent. But then to implementing this technology to get the efficiency of the airport, now another challenging will be is how to align with the standard operation process and with this technology integration. You have to merging this operation model and then the technology integration together. And then this will be converting to driving the operational excellence. And this will improving the efficiency. And when the efficiency is over there, of course, the passenger experience and so on, even the revenue generation, we will getting in a proper, let's say, circle on that.
Now, in your view now, what types of partnerships or investments could help address these industry-wide challenges identified?
The kind of partnership is, as I said before, aviation is is very, let's say, open. It's international, and then again, it's a lot of different kind of stakeholders and taking care of different part. I think for the partnership, every state, when you're doing this aviation, so the partnership could be, let's say, to have the financial investor and also the industry players, the investment come in. Both on investment and then on operations, on the, let's say, the technology provider, and then or some, let's say, the key equipment manufacturer and so on, let's say, to set up the local, let's say, maintenance service team and so on. So, I mean, overall, the partnership somehow is to have the country's aviation to link with the international aviation ecosystem, which including the manufacturers, operators, maintenance service providers, and consultants, investors, or bring all the whole, let's say, stakeholders, forming different kind of partnership and with local, and then bringing it in to be localized, and then making the knowledge transfer. So this is somehow how aviation works. Aviation always connected around the world.
But from a global perspective now, what examples or case studies shows how other countries have successfully strengthened their aviation sectors?
Yeah, this very, very broad question is, how to say that? I think particularly, let's say, if we take some example on the Middle East. From the last decade, you see in the Middle East, so they were driving for aviation, is right, a good model is that they drive in the airport, same time they drive in the airlines. So on aviation, this is the airport and the airlines, they will always team up together to bring the best business model to service for the passengers, for the luggage, for the cargo, and then service for the aircraft movements. So this is the combining with infrastructure, airlines operation, and then to link it up together. I think Middle East, from last decade, Middle East built a very good example. And then for China, since the last 2 decades, with the fast growing, So we are really handling quite a big amount of the flight movement and then the passengers, the big populations. So it's a proof that we're quite some, from global perspective, it's one of the Asian model. One is the Middle East model. It's really quite very promising for emerging market for that, how to develop the aviation sectors in the country.
But again, let's look at policy or regulatory reforms that you think Nigeria should prioritize. Of course, the aim is to unlock more growth in the entire aviation space.
These, again, as I said, aviation would mean the airport, airlines, and also the regulator. That's mainly, let's say, from state government and so on. So for aviation, there was one particular thing I'd like to mention is now, from policy and government point of view, one is now to implement strongly the own regulations. Aviation means safety and regulations. So every country have their own, let's say, civil aviation authority to implementing all the regulation and so on. I mean, this is one. So there was international standard also there. So this implementing all the international standard and by the local regulator, the civil aviation authority. I think this is one of the key elements for aviation sector for every state. And then besides that one is, if look at about from like state point of view, is airport is a kind of infrastructure, is not only a single infrastructure. The airport is grow, because the airports was always starting from initial phase. They will always grow, and then the growth will be continuous to the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or even 50 years, because airport is kind of grow very organic infrastructure. So if you foresee it will be the growth, I mean, let's say to consider the pre-reserve, consider about the future airport expansion, and this becoming a really quite strategically have to think about that one, which means for all the current infrastructure when you build the airport, so you have to consider about the future airport expansion to reserve, let's say, some space, some land, some resources, for the possibility of the future expansion. So normally this is kind of common way of for this industry is now for the airport, somehow you need to set up a master plan, not for the next 5 years, master plan for the next 15 years or 30 years. Within this master plan, you can have already the footprint to make the land or make the infrastructure, the space available for the future decades about airport expansion. So this is somehow, I think this is a common practice from our industry.
Before I let you go now, I'll still ask you again that what foundational elements must be developed for Nigeria to evolve into a major aviation hub? I'm really concerned about that. I mean,
Nigeria is now from this continent. African continents will be very promising, high potential for aviation, and then particularly for Nigeria, with the population, and then with economic scale, and then strategic location. I'm definitely strongly believe. So Nigeria will becoming, let's say, aviation hub for this continent. Although there were quite some challenges right now. But again, in the long run, like I said, improving the airport infrastructures, and then to have, like I say, strong setup to enabling the airlines to grow. I think based on these two elements and strong, like I say, the government's the vision and strategy to accelerating these sectors, like we did for this air show, is the first time, but the country delivered a message to the whole continent, I say, to driving the aviation to move ahead. So it's pretty sure, and later on, based on all the implementing methods on infrastructure, on enabling airlines by putting additional efforts on emerald things, and then upgrading the technology on the infrastructure, I'm pretty sure in the future, and then Nigeria will becoming a really aviation hub, for the continent. maybe not limited to this continent.
All right, there. I think it's a good way to live it. I must thank you, Mr. Tim Chen, Vice President, Aviation. Thank you so very much for your time. Hope you're having a good time at the show in Abuja. Hope to see you again soon.